reform as perhaps part of a big debt deal. However, President Clinton also took a personal shot at an old friend of this show, conservative tax reformer Grover Norquist. According to Politico, Clinton said Republicans need any revenue concessions to be, and I quote, approved in advance by Grover Norquist. And then he went on to say that Norquist is having a chilling effect. And he asked, quote, what has this country come to when one person has to give you permission to do what's best for the country? Well, here to respond is Grover Norquist, who joins us live from Puerto Rico this evening. Also with us, former Alabama Democratic Congressman Archer Davis, one of the absolute smartest Democrats I've seen in at least 40 years. He is presently with the law firm S.N.R. Denton. Archer, welcome. Grover, you need to respond to President Clinton. You're having a chilling effect. You're stopping progress. What do you say?
Well, President Clinton was elected because George Herbert Walker Bush raised taxes, and he convinced a number of Republicans who'd taken the pledge not to raise taxes to break their word to the American people. So after a fairly successful presidency, 4 years where he collapsed the Soviet Union, he kicked Iraq out of Kuwait and didn't get stuck occupying the place, successful presidency except for one thing. He raised taxes. And what Obama and Clinton want is the Republican Party to abandon its good economic policy and its good political policy of not raising taxes. And he's frustrated that the Republicans are holding, and for 6 months of Obama and the Democrats and the New York Times and the Washington Post screaming at them, oh, be reasonable, raise taxes, they keep saying no. And tax reform, cutting rates, broadening the base, taking the corporate and individual rate to 25, that's a project separate from cutting the overspending that Obama and Pelosi have stuck us with.
I mean, Archer Davis, let me just ask you this. In some sense, you're an observer of this debate, but I believe you regard yourself as a colleague of Bill Clinton, and you're kind of a Clinton, more centrist Democrat. Why do you reckon that your colleagues now in the House and the Senate and the White House are so keen on tax increases? It seems like that's become a Democratic obsession. Millionaires, billionaires, corporate jets, oil and gas, hedge funds and partnerships. What good will that do to the economy and your party, Archer?
Larry, I'm always distrustful when people lump things together that don't belong together. When you're talking about tax breaks for jets, you're talking about hedge funds, you're talking about the oil industry. Those are three different discrete parts of the tax code. They all serve different purposes. Some are more defensible than others. At least one case is hardly defensible at all. But there's a much more important topic that's on the table here. Bill Clinton, who knows a little bit about this, he did create 22 million jobs, and growth was 7.5% on average in his last 2 years in the White House. Bill Clinton is exactly right when he says that we need to have a balanced approach. Yes, that does mean lowering the corporate marginal rate. Yes, that does mean preserving lower rates on capital gains. It also means looking at the subsidies, the breaks in the corporate tax code, and grading them by one standard. Do they promote or incentivize growth? Do they promote entrepreneurship? If so, they're defensible. If not, they're not defensible in a time where we have staggering deficits and our credit's in peril.
I think that's all very sensible. But Grover, I come back to you. What's not on the table in the next few weeks for the so-called debt ceiling bill is what Archer's talking about. There's no lowering of marginal rates on the other side. Grover, why should the GOP settle for eliminating deductions and going after these companies without spending? Why isn't this whole thing just a spending cut exercise on the debt ceiling, Grover? What's wrong with that?
Nothing's wrong with it, and that is exactly what we're doing. The Republicans in the House and Senate have said for 6 months now, without any break in their position, you have a spending problem, Mr. President. You and Pelosi and Reid have increased spending each year $1 trillion a year, an annual jump of spending by $1 trillion. You need to bring the spending down.
But why is Clinton and Obama taking aim at you? That's what I want to go. This is not new. You've had the anti-tax pledge for years. Why are they suddenly taking aim at you? Do you think they're trying to force the Republicans to make a Papa Bush mistake? Is that what's at the heart of this?
Oh, that's exactly what it is. And Reid and Durbin, a number of the leading Democrats, have said over and over again, it gets in the inside the Beltway magazines and papers. They want the Republicans to break their word on taxes so they can take the House back and stop the Republican sweep in the Senate. If the Republicans force Obama to rein in spending, they keep the House, they take the Senate, they take the presidency. If Obama can get the Republicans to shoot themselves in the foot by any tax increase of any size, then he can say the Republicans are liars, they're just like everyone else, they'll raise your taxes too, maybe not as much as Obama would, but they'll raise your taxes, and the Republicans will get wiped out just as they did in 1992.
Archer, I'll give you the last few comments. Is that what's going on, Archer? Is this whole thing to just have the Republican Party fall on its own sword?
Larry, for once, I'd like to see both parties get out of the box of figuring out who they can blame. If we can get out of this blame game and both sides come to the table with credible ideas, yes, Democrats need to be open to means testing part of Medicare. Yes, Republicans need to be open to eliminating corporate tax subsidies that don't encourage growth or productivity.
All right.
Both sides need to be committed to a trade agenda.
I'm running out of time. Archer Davis, you're too sensible. That's the whole thing. You are much too sensible, but it's a pleasure to see you. Grover, keep fighting, my friend. That was former Congressman Archer Davis and Grover Norquist. I'm Larry Kudlow. That's it for tonight's show. We will be back tomorrow evening.